Good afternoon, Benjamin Hatfield, Teach Me to Dive. We're talking to Giorgio. Giorgio is somebody you need to know. He's got quite the resume of scientific diving. He's got a PhD in geology. He's also the Northwest manager for the North American manager for Ratio Dive Computers. But we're going to talk today about his book, Risk Management for Diving Operations. So diving safety is something that's definitely near and dear to my heart, and I'm happy that Giorgio took the time to come on and talk about his book. And by the way, in the comments down below, you'll also get a link to his book. It is on Amazon, like any good book should be, and easy for you to read as well. It's a pretty easy read, about 200 pages, but it's definitely worth your time. Giorgio, thanks for taking the time with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So how did you get involved in scientific diving?
So that was a long love, if you wish, long history of love. So I started my university learning as a geology student in many years ago. At the same time, I was also interested in becoming a scuba diver. So this is what I did. And then pretty much immediately, I realized that scuba diving can be a great tool for geologists because you can explore a lot of for example, flooded caves. So I moved towards cave diving, if you wish. And then actually for my master's degree dissertation, I did a lot of deep diving in a sinkhole that, believe it or not, is one of the deepest, if not the deepest in the world. And it's just like 30 minutes driving from Rome, the big city. We have a specific geological structure there. I'm not bothering you with geology, but the idea is that you have a lot of limestone. And there are also volcanic fluids from old ancient volcanoes. So what happens, these fluids, they eat the limestone. Therefore, we have this huge sinkhole, which is extremely deep. I did a lot of diving there, a lot of exploration, mostly with the Italian fire department. They helped me a lot with everything. So that was unbelievable. And then after that, I started collaborating as a scientific diver with different research institutions. I also became the representative for Italy for scientific diving toward Europe. Europe is kind of, I know in the US, we have the American Academy Underwater Science. In Europe, we have a certificate that is valid through all the partners, so European partners. Basically, you get certified in Italy, or I was certified in Finland, just because. And then you can dive professionally as a scientific diver in any other country in Europe. So I was the representative for Italy for this board, basically. And then after that, I did my PhD once again using diving in a kind of volcanic area south of Italy. So a lot of acidic gases, a lot of risk, if you wish, because you dive on something that can be toxic for you. So we had to develop specific methods. And then finally, I moved to the UK for a while, doing my job as a geologist. And then definitely I moved here to the US, and now I'm collaborating with the Hole Oceanographic Institution and the diving department.
That's amazing. So we hear a lot about, certainly I'm a technical recreational diver and technical diver as well, but you start moving into a whole different kind of genre and realm when you start moving into scientific diving. What does a typical scientific dive look like?
So to be honest, a scientific diving is closer to recreational or technical diving than commercial diving. So a scientific diver is not a commercial diver. So what a scientific diver does most of the time is collecting data, collecting information. Can be biology, can be geology. And sometimes we do light commercial diving work, which is under the American Academy of Underwater Science standards. So, for example, we use small tools to take our samples. So, like coring corals, because we need to explore and to analyze the internal part of some corals. So we have to physically drill a small core through the coral. But this is very limited commercial diving activity. So as I say, most of the time what we do, we take samples, we take pictures, we map, we study, and then we collect this data, and then the data will be used for scientific papers as well. But I say we are underwater as anyone else. So the risk involved in any diving operation are to be managed and to be assessed.
Fair enough. So what additional qualifications would you need to do technical dives in scientific purposes?
So to be a scientific diver, your job should be focused on science. Most of the time, your background is as a scientist. So
Okay.
you will get a degree in biology, geology, chemistry, and so on. But also we have some technicians, so they not necessarily have a degree in science, but they learn practical skills, so they can use these skills in to support the science. So as I say, most of the time you have a background as a scientist, and in the US, to be a scientific diver, you have to work with a scientific diving institution.
Okay.
This is a little bit different from Europe, because in Europe you get a card, a certificate, and then you are a scientific diver always. In the US, to be an active scientific diver, you have to physically work with some kind of research or scientific institutions. So it's slightly different, but pretty much it's the same thing. So I would say scientific diver is collecting data underwater. So diving is a tool to collect information for scientific researchers.
Gotcha. So what's the most interesting scientific dive you've been a part of?
So in the past was a lot of cave diving for geology. So that was extremely interesting. An example, in a cave, about a kilometer, so half a mile plus inside the cave, we found a dark sand, black sand, which was quite unusual because the cave was limestone. So we took samples of the sand. The sand is a volcanic sand, but there are no volcanoes nearby. So the closest volcano, very old volcano, now is extinct. It's just the remain, the relic, if you wish, of this volcano, was like 11 or 20 kilometers far from this cave. That means that this volcanic material somehow managed to came from that area so far down in this cave. So this doesn't mean that you can actually dive, you can swim for 20 kilometers until you reach the source of this material. But definitely there is a physical and hydraulic, I would say, connection between. So it was extremely new. In another cave, the spring had a very strange habit with immediately high flow and then nothing and then a high flow again. And no one was really explaining why this spring was behaving this way. Once again, we did some diving and we found a lake inside. So it's a lake underground. You can come up at the surface. So what happens, we left there an instrument to measure the level variation of the surface of the lake. So what happens, this lake is like a big sump. So when you have heavy rains, this lake, it goes up and up. So you have a charging, if you wish, of water. And then the pressure is so high, and then all the water is flushed out of the system. And then the system starts recharging again. So once again, this is something that, if you do not dive, there is no way you can understand why this spring is behaving in this way.
Interesting. That's for sure. So you've definitely done some interesting dives. And one of them you kind of touched on, you were working on, I believe, for your master's program in 2000. You were diving the second deepest flooded cave sinkhole in the world, and it's the Pozo del Mero.
Yes.
1,286 feet deep. It's huge. And so as we look at that, you start looking at this map, you're like, oh my goodness, how deep did you go and what did you learn?
So we did, as a divers, me and my friend Riccardo Malatesta, who is also a fireman. So we dove down to about 100 meters trimix. Then obviously we saw that the structure was going deeper and deeper. At that point, we took some water samples and I took some pictures. And then we realized that it was pretty much pointless to go deeper, because think also the time, it was early 2000. So there were no rebreathers available at the time, really, and so on. So it was open circuit with all the limits of open circuit. Plus, this area is true, it's very close to the city, but you have physically to walk down for like 70, 80 meters, so 250 feet to reach the water. So if something happens, it's hard to bring you up. So we decided the risk was too high. So the rest of the exploration has been done with ROV, very basic ROV. Once again, the firemen, they provide the instruments. So with this ROV, we reached 400 meters pretty much of maximum depth, but the structure is not finished. We could see that the cave is going down, but just that was the physical limit of the machine. That ROV could not go deeper than about 400 meters. So we stopped at that time. And then I moved to other field of research. So there is still a possibility of exploration there.
Gotcha. So what was the big takeaway? What did you learn from that other than it's a big hole?
Right. It's a big hole. But then once again, for example, from the samples of water, we know that the water that is there is the water, the main aquifer of the area. So this is important for protection of the aquifer. Plus, biologists, they discover a crustacea inside, Niphargus, which is a species that lives only in that area because genetically is different from any else of this kind of animals. But then pretty recently, another research group, they found the same species in a cave, in a flooded cave, like 15 kilometers from this area. So once again, that means there must be an hydraulic connection. That gives an idea how huge the karst system can be in the area. And because it's also close to a big city, this is also a potential reservoir for water, for high quality water. So we have to protect the environment. We have to avoid pollution because, sinkholes is like in Florida. Sinkholes are a window on the main aquifer. So if something goes in, then it will spread to the aquifer. So you have to protect the areas. That was something that, was new because no one actually knew how deep this structure was and how connected to the rest of the aquifer the sinkhole is.
Wow. That's really interesting. Now, so through all this, I mean, you did a 100-meter dive on Trimix. I'm guessing probably you did that CCR, but maybe open circuit. How did you do that dive?
So that was open circuit. Circuit. Yeah. That was in the early 2000, kind of that. So was open circuit, a lot of stage tanks. I don't even remember now the details of the mix or whatsoever. But I remember it was a very long dive. Well, just to give you an idea, I think we stayed like 3 to 4 minutes maximum depth, and then we spent like 2 or 3 hours coming up the compression. We have safety divers coming toward us to bring whatever spare cylinders. We also had the compression chamber ready with a mix specifically made for this dive. So something happened because if you have a band from helium, it's a little bit complex to be treated than nitrogen. So they have to know what you were breathing to have the compression mix available in the chamber to do eventually the treatment. So that there was a chamber ready. There was even an helicopter in standby because this area, as I said, is close to the city, but it's not so easy to reach. So the easiest way was, for medical evacuation was an helicopter. So it was a very complex operation, to be honest.
Of course. Absolutely. So going through these complex operations, diving 300 meters, open circuit in a cave in Italy, you had to have learned a little something about safety. So you end up writing the book, The Risk Management for Divers. And a great book, by the way. I haven't completed it quite yet, but I'm not too far away from that either. And I definitely picked up a few things as well. What inspired you to write your book?
So besides, that was 100 meters, 300 feet. Not 300 meters. That might be my dive. But anyway, so the book. So what happened? This book came out from a research that we were doing for ourselves at Hole Oceanographic, the diving department. The diving manager is Ed O'Brien, and he's always interested in enhancing obviously the safety of the scientists, the safety of the divers, and the proficiency of the diving. So we start collecting a lot of information about how we can improve our diving management. We also published a few papers before, and then this amount of material was growing through a few years, honestly. So my colleagues, they say, okay, why don't you write something more than a paper? I said, okay, I might try. So this is how I started writing the book. It was at the beginning, it was kind of manual for us, and then it became a book for everybody. There is a lot of research in this book. There is a lot of references. So this is the idea came out from our practical use of risk management for our team, and then this is how basically I managed to write this book. And now this book is also used by we have developed a leadership training for the scientists, for our scientific divers, and we are using the book basically as a main textbook for them. Is a pilot training so far. We picked like 5 of the most promising young divers, because the idea is to what I want to do is to transmit my knowledge to the young generations, because we need new scientists, we need new divers, we need new scientific divers. So as much as we can, we are spreading the information, and then this book is also focused on not necessarily on scientific diving, but I would say on professional diving. So there are concepts of leaderships, for example. There are analysis of a lot of different risks, and not necessarily all the risks are for recreational divers. There are some specific risks which are more for professional divers. But still, the idea is to basically transmit the knowledge to other divers. So from a diver to another diver.
Excellent. So if a diver could do one thing to be safer, what would that be?
I would say know your limits. I think this is the main key for safety. Know your limits in terms of your experience, your knowledge, your gear, and the environment that you are diving in. Because unfortunately, in the book, there are also an analysis of diving accident. And you see that most of the time, there is a pattern of mistakes, a pattern of, I would say, unsafe behaviors that is always pretty much the same. And the very root cause of most of the accident is because the diver was not aware or was not accepting the limits of the situation. So sometimes, the diver was not skilled enough, or sometimes he was an extremely skilled diver but was pushing too much, and so on. So I would say the main thing is just know your limits, know the limits of the team. Because remember, it's the diver with less experience that is dictating the level of the team. And following this very basic, I would say, rules, I think we can strongly reduce the overall risk of the operation.
Excellent. So in your book, you do talk about team safety and how that plays into diving safety. You want to talk a little bit about that with me?
Yeah, sure. So
good.
So one important thing is what is called situational awareness. That means to be aware of what's going around you in a logical way. That means to be focused on the main elements of the dive. And this is a singular thing. So each diver should be aware, but also at team level, which is even more complex to manage, but is the only way to dive safely. So for example, during the briefing, we had a small issue with a briefing, a misunderstanding once. After that, now we change the way that we do our briefing. So what we do, the briefing is someone is briefing the others, and then each one has to repeat in his or her own words the concepts. In this way, it's not like just a knowledge. It's like, okay, we dive, we go maximum, 70 feet, we stay 65 minutes, turn around pressure is 800 psi. So, and then it's not like, okay, yes, acknowledge. No. So I say it, and the other diver will repeat. So how deep we are going? How long we stay? What is the turnaround pressure? What is the operation that we have to do? And so on. So the briefing becomes an interactive communication between the dive leader and the rest of the team. And I can assure you that since we are doing this way, it's not only safer, but it's even more proficient because everyone knows exactly what are the steps of the dive. Sometimes we do complex operations. Sometimes it's very easy diving, honestly, but sometimes you have to move a lot of instruments and having multiple divers in the water and so on. And so the briefing can become even a longer discussion. But the point is that we notice that a good briefing is the perfect starting point for a safe and proficient dive afterward.
That makes sense. Now, how do human factors come into play with that safety principle?
Sorry, again?
How do human factors come into play with that safety factor?
Yes, there is also part of human factors in any operation, because obviously we are humans and we interact each other, we interact with the systems. So this is very important. So human factor or non-technical skills, if you wish, have to be assessed. So once again, for example, personality. When a dive leader has to pick the team, it's not only the technical skills of the divers. He has also to understand the character, if you wish, the psychology of the divers. Because sometimes, it's very important to have a functional team. So or you should know as a leader, what are the best matches within the team. And also provide time for the team to build a relation. It's not like you take together different divers, they never dove together, and they will dive perfectly. This is not going to happen, unfortunately. It takes time to build a personal interaction within the team itself. So fostering a good attitude within the team is very important. Even for as our level, for example, there is definitely a no blaming attitude. If something wrong happens, that will be discussed, but everyone is free to say something. It's not, and no one is afraid to say, "Oh, look, I did this wrong. I don't want to tell because maybe I get in troubles." No, this is absolutely an unsafe attitude of the organization. So our team, our group, our institution is extremely open to discuss whatever problems you might have in a way that in the future we hope to avoid this problem to happening again. But there is definitely a no blaming attitude, because mistakes happen. That's it. It's not like someone wakes up in the morning, oh, you know what, today I'm messing up my dive, I want to mess up my dive. Now, obviously, we want to do the best that we can, but sometimes stuff happens, unfortunately. So what we think is important is to discuss. And then we have seen that when this happens, most of the time we solve the issue and the issue is not happening again.
That's awesome. So some of the things that come into factor are the concern with the litigious nature of society. How do you find when it comes into the human factor of being completely transparent with what happened during the dive? Does that litigious nature that we've kind of dealt with come into play?
Yeah, this is true. It's human. And then also no one really wants to admit that, okay, I made a mistake. So once again, it takes, reciprocal trust. And so once again, the main thing, there is no blaming whatsoever. And then another stuff, we do a lot of proficiency dives. So what we do before the actual job, we do some test dives between us. So we can rehearsal the main procedures. And sometimes, stuff happens during that dives. And this is actually a good thing. I did a dive, I think yesterday, nothing big, but I lost my SMB. because I messed up with, I have gloves thicker than usual. So I was actually trying, to deploy the SMB. I don't know, my glove was stuck in the line, something happened. So I physically lost the SMB that went up, and no big deal. It was just there was no real reason to deploy. It was just a test. But that was good, because in this way, I say, okay, I think these gloves are not good for the job that we had to do. So you discover an issue before actually be involved in the job. And so this can be for whatever, minor things, bigger things. And then we analyze, we have a post-dive debrief. So if most of the time nothing happens, honestly. But if something happens, then we discuss pretty freely, openly, each other. Say, okay, what happened? Why this happened? How we can avoid this to happen again? Was a wrong procedure? Was the procedure correct, but the diver did not apply the procedure for whatever reason? Was stress, because sometimes you can get fatigued, or you have your own problems, and obviously, ideally you don't bring your problems with you underwater, but in real life sometimes this happens. So you have to be open to admit that some days just are not the great days of your life. So maybe if you can avoid doing some very challenging operation when you don't feel ready, and we are open to tell, we can tell, look, and I don't feel doing this operation today, and we arrange in a way that we are standby divers. So at team level, we have a backup if this should happen.
Sure, anybody can call dive at any reason without consequence, right?
Right, exactly. That's the point, because you definitely have peer pressure, and professional pressure is extremely damaging, because people they feel pressured to do something. Oh, I have to do this because I lose my job, or I lose my face. So what I mean. So, and then cave diving communities, everyone can turn the dive at any time. There are no questions. And in my diving, a couple of times I did turn the dive because I was not feeling good. I say, no, this dive is not going I'm not feeling this dive going as it should be. So that's it. You stop, you came out, you discuss, relax, and then you will dive again.
It's amazing. The ocean will be there tomorrow, won't it?
Right, even the cave.
It's not going anywhere.
No.
I love that. So how do you discuss managing stress and divers to mitigate risk?
So we noticed that the main thing is to reduce the stress and to have experience on the operation. So it's not new for you, because the main thing for us, not for us as a divers, but generally speaking, is uncertainty, when you do not know what's going on. So you can be kind of scared because you do not know. I never did this before. So what we do this before. In a way, we test. So are we using a new tool? Are we doing a new procedure? Are we diving with new divers? So we spend time together testing, diving in a way that, in a safe and controlled environment where there are no pressures, because it doesn't matter. You can come up in 2 minutes later and nothing. It's not that you are losing the job. It's not that you are messing up the operation. So depending on the complexity of the actual operations, we spend a number of dives beforehand, testing, trying. In this way, when the real operation comes, everyone is pretty much already prepared to do whatever job was supposed to be done. And we notice a very relaxing atmosphere within the team, even if the operations sometimes are challenging.
Gotcha. So divers use checklists to help them be more certain with what they're getting ready to do?
Yeah, so has been proved that checklists are very helpful. So we use routinely checklists. Obviously, some of us, they dive a rebreather, so there is a checklist there, no discussion. But also doing open circuit dives, there is a checklist that not necessarily has to be a very complex checklist. Sometimes it's a few bullet points that you keep doing again and again. And then in this way, you have a backup for whatever. Say, for example, dry suit diving. So you dress up and then you check your gear following this checklist, and then your dive buddy will check his or her gear, and then you cross-check. Takes really nothing, takes a couple of minutes. But then you are sure that you are not forgetting to connect the dry suit inflator, for example, or the BC inflator, or whatever else can be. Oh, I forgot my lamp. So we have a standardized system to check, to cross-check all our gear. Is somehow, is when you land with the aircraft and then you hear the captain telling, cross-check. That means the cabin crew is cross-checking that everything is okay. And we do the same thing pretty much. So we cross-check our gear, our tools, whatever we are using. And it's once again, it's not long. It takes really a couple of minutes, and then it can save the dive. I'm not saying that something horrible will happen, but still, you jump in, you forgot to connect to your light. Okay, you ruin your dive because you don't have your light anymore. You have to go maybe on backup light or something like that. So spend a couple of minutes at surface before with your dive buddy, cross-check, and that will improve a lot the safety and, once again, the quality of your dive, if you wish.
Of course. Well, fantastic. Giorgio, I appreciate you today. If you haven't had a chance, make sure to go to Amazon. Check out the links below. There's a direct link to this book on Amazon. It's definitely worth the read. If you are into safe diving or want to be safer in your own diving operations, this is the book for you. Risk Management for Diving Operations. It's well written and put together. It has, I believe, 12 chapters. As you got to go through it, but it's definitely worth it. And one of my challenges with most recreational divers is they don't take the time to continue to learn to be safe. They just want to jump in the water and see pretty fish, but they don't think about the fact that they're on life-saving operations. Again, Giorgio, thank you so much for taking the time with me today. I greatly appreciate you. I greatly appreciate you coming on and discussing your book as well. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, just one thing, because in the book there is something about medical fitness, and obviously they can say, okay, look, yes, you are a doctor, but you are a doctor in geology. So I would like to highlight that the medical aspect have been reviewed by a medical doctor, Brian Strickland, and is also an expert in high altitude medicine. Is doing a lot of research on the Himalaya. So I asked him. He was very kind to review the medical aspect of the book, obviously. But once again, as a main author, mistakes is my fault. That's it. But just to tell that, and mostly to thank him, because it was a great support for the medical aspect of the book.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, Giorgio, thank you for coming in again. Again, Benjamin Hadfield, Teach Me to Dive. Make sure to subscribe and like this channel and share it with your friends. We have great interviews like Giorgio here. I mean, Giorgio Caramanna is absolutely fantastic and extremely knowledgeable in scientific diving safety. His book, Risk Management for Diving Operations, is an absolute worthwhile read. Pick it up from Amazon. The link is in the bio here as well. Again, Giorgio, thank you.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. Thank you.